Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the second APAC SchoolTech Innovation Conclave. This has been part of a three-day education conclave we have been conducting, in today's day three. Day one and day two, the focus was on higher education, and today the focus is on schools and K-12 education. We had a very series of panel discussions discussing different aspects of technology deployment, the impact of NEP, and other facets where technology is being leveraged in the education segment. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the panelists for this discussion on how to adopt a blended learning model in school, and what are the opportunities there and what are the challenges there. So we have with us the esoteric set of panelists, and let me welcome Revati Srinivasan, Director Education, Srimati Sulachana Devi Singhania School of Thane. Welcome, Revati.
My pleasure.
Uh, Next, we have with us Mr. A.P. Sharma, Principal Director Academics at Kundan Vidya Mandir of Ludhiana. Welcome, Mr. Sharma. Next,
Yeah, thank you
we
very
have,
much. Thank
welcome.
you very much. Right now, I am in Dubai, so joining from Dubai.
Oh, great, great. Next, we have with us Mr. John A. Bagul, Principal of the South City International School of Kolkata. Welcome, John.
Thank you so much. Warm pleasure to be out here among all distinguished panelists.
Sure. We have with us Anupama Devi, Academic Officer, Futuristic Edu Initiatives, Hyderabad. Welcome, Anupama.
Namaste. Thank you so much,
Namaste.
sir.
Namaste. And to moderate the discussion, we have with us Dr. Nikhil Wag, Chairman of Educon International School, Pune. Welcome, Dr. Nikhil.
Thank you for having me in the part of this panel.
Sure. And now I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Nikhil. It's your show, and
Yeah,
have a great, insightful, and interactive interaction. Thank you.
thank you very much. Good afternoon, one and all. It's a pleasure to be amongst all of you today at the second School Tech Innovation Conclave hosted by APAC News Network. I thank the organizers for inviting me to be a part of this panel discussion on blended learning model opportunities and challenges. I am joined by a very distinguished panel today to discuss and deliberate on the same. I warmly welcome all my esteemed panelists for this discussion. Warm welcome to all of you again. The pandemic has posed quintessential adaptive and transformative challenge, not only to teachers across the globe, but also to students and learners. Excellence and equity, cornerstone of a good education system, are being challenged in every part of the world. Our greatest concern is that difference in parental involvement and access to technology exacerbates inequality. The elimination of digital divide amongst all stakeholders is a major challenge for K-12 schools. And as important as continuing quality education is, it is important to maintain mental, emotional, and physical well-being of students, parents, and teachers. One more challenge is the training of teachers and establishing education ecosystems to adapt new emerging technologies, provoking a reconceptualization of teaching learning process while serving as a catalyst for transformation and innovation. At the same time, as in every major challenge, there is an opportunity to improve. A new model of imparting quality education is emerging, which not only personalizes education but also adds impetus and enhances our endeavor to create innovative student centric learning environments. On this background, today we are going to discuss various aspects of adopting blended learning model in school education. its impact on students' learning trajectory, their social emotional well-being, their engagement in their own learning, transition from a virtual to blended learning model post-pandemic, and its effect on learner-centered approach in teaching. I have a distinguished panel with me with a very rich experience in education, and their views would definitely make all of us think about the way ahead. I would now like each of the panelists to start with opening remarks on the subject, and whether this blended learning is going to be the new normal for 21st century learners. I would request Revati ma'am to start the comment. Over to you, ma'am. Your speaker is mute, I suppose.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Wag. I think we have the privilege of having Mr. Sharma here sitting in Dubai because we have technology here. So
Absolutely.
I think that itself is my opening remark by saying that, technology is there to stay and we have to use it very, very positively. So to all our viewers, I'd like to, when we are speaking on blended learning, I see blended learning in two models. Let me just take the OTT platform as an example. You have a visual happening. I heard a Bengali film is very good, but I don't know Bengali. I see the subtitles. The subtitles on the bottom and the picture on the top explains to me the story, and I'm satisfied. But there can be many interpretations and small nuances of the language which I may not have got because I don't know the language. Yet, on the whole, I have understood. I'll give you a second example of take in a small pot or a bottle, yellow color, and you have a blue color pot. Not the pot is not color, but you have paint inside. So paint box of yellow and a paint box of blue. Mix the two, both of them lose their identity. What you have is color green, which means it's got blended completely. Now, just move that into your classrooms. If I'm able to use in whether I'm having the children physically in my school and using those techniques and tools, or if I'm having them at their homes or doing an online research or online study, the outcomes must come. What we want to desire as outcomes must come. So there has to be a sense of purpose for what I am doing my lesson. And the lessons outcomes has to come in terms of competencies. That means behavioral changes that you can see in the children. That's the true meaning of what learning outcomes are. So the learning outcomes cannot be marked by the terms of percentages and marks. It is about the outcomes that comes in the form of competencies, in the form of knowledge creation, and in the form of skills creation. So nothing would be possible without blended learning. And on that note, I'd like to say just open your minds as open as an open parachute to be taking off in a new world that requires a new mindset.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your very thought-provoking opening remarks, especially the practical examples that you started with. Let me just go on to Mr. AP Sharma for his opening remarks on whether blended learning is the new normal for 21st century. Mr.
Thank you,
Sharma.
Dr. Wog. So out of the sight, out of the mind. And I say, children used to think, so out of the school, we reach home, nobody is looking at us and we are free. And let me tell you that blue is beautiful, yellow is beautiful, but green is wonderful. So the thing is, when technology met with the learning, it makes a better outcome. And very simple thing is that if we are considering it a new normal, then somewhere we are demeaning it. The reason behind it, that every day the definition of new normal is changing. And you never know that by May or June, again there will be a new normal. So every day is a new normal. And mankind used to learn from these things. And remember that every opportunity is a challenge and every challenge is an opportunity. And when we look challenges and opportunities, that mankind learned many, many things. And of course, it is said that necessity is the mother of invention. I must salute all the teachers, mentors, and the leaders, team leaders who are sitting in this panel for their wonderful work during this blended learning. And blendeds are always beautiful. So now we must sit on the pilot seat to navigate in such a way that sometime we are virtual and sometime we are real. And there are so many aspects of education where we found that parents liked virtual PTMs very much. They said that there is no wastage of time. We are not waiting outside. There are few things which can be taught theoretically, and there are few things which can be taught practically. And then we need to define what practical and what theoretical. It is going to be a wonderful discussion, and I'm quite sure that there will be a lot of brainstorming on it. That's my opening remark.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma, for your opening remarks. Let me quickly move on to Mr. John Bagul, sir, for his opening remarks on the subject matter.
Thank you, Dr. Wag.
Yeah.
And we're already getting enlightened by our eminent panelists giving us their opening remarks. Yes, blended learning is an outcome of the pandemic. There have been a lot of rough times that we have faced, but I think we human beings are survivors. And as I'm a biologist, I would say that we learn to adapt, we learn to be flexible, and it's obviously survival of the fittest. The education world did take a beating, and we are resorting to blended learning, but we should also remember blended learning involves not just face to face but also the technology. And I don't think every educational organization is able to afford the cost factor involved in blended learning, and at the same time the receiving end, the children. So though they are, because all children would not be able to afford again this technology, so it is there for those who can afford it, but there are lots of things yet to learn. We have been moving on, and as human beings and as a civilization, I think we learn new tools, we adapt. After the nuclear bomb, we realize what it really is. So as we move on further, and we will deliberate today on all these factors, but it is something that we need to keep in mind. It's not something
Absolutely.
that can be discarded, and that's the way forward. Thank you so much with these for these
Thank you, John, sir. Thank you
opportunity.
for your opening remarks. Let me move on to Anupama Devi. She for her own opening remarks on the subject matter. Over to you, Anupama.
Thank you so much, sir. This pandemic caused by COVID-19 has given an opportunity for all the teachers. And I can say that there was a big challenge in the initially where teachers has to take up and do it. But no doubt our teachers have taken it. And it is that they have taken and used the e-learning platforms to reach the students, and schools have been also using the e-learning classes, and the demand for that has been increased, where our teachers have taken flipped classroom model for implementation of this blended learning. We were into the process, and where teachers has to take it both. If I would like to quote an example of grade 10 students, the once the wave is off, we were called them to the school, and then they started face to face. Again, there was a notification stating that we need to close the schools. Then we have to move it to the virtual mode, and where our students and teachers were well equipped with their trainings, and could take it further for the engaging classrooms. And also they have set the digital tools and technologies for the students, where students and the teachers are right now well equipped, and it is all again face to face interaction is also important, along with the use of technology in the education system to achieve the outcomes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for your opening remarks. So, to summarize the opening remarks, blendedness is in the nature, as told by Revati ma'am, and change is the only constant. We educators should always realize this. And teachers have demonstrated resilience in this pandemic, and they have adapted to the change it is a very appreciable thing that teachers and educators have in the world have done this. Now let us start our point of discussions with does this blended learning models supplement and complement the teaching learning process? What would be the key components of blended learning? And to take this question, I would request again Anupama Devi ma'am to start with this and give us some highlights and on this topic. Over to you,
Thank you.
Anupama ma'am. Back to back.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that the blended learning model is important. So giving rise to interactive and informative learning experiences. Blending learning integrates online and offline learning, and it is that the components there should be a suitable learning management system, well-defined course structure, clear learning objectives, and well-trained teachers to make a perfect recipe of an effective blended learning classroom. So we need to build an effective blended learning classroom to achieve the outcomes and make our students engaged in the teaching learning process. So blending learning offers an immense advantages to students, and they stand to benefit from the structured practices of the classroom while learning at their own pace, having an adaptive and personalized nature of online learning. Educators must then focus on developing blended learning courses that can effectively merge these two techniques to create informative and interactive learning environments. Building an effective and blended learning classrooms requires careful planning and also preparation. So the practices are helpful in creating a successful blended classroom environment. First, as said, we should have a comprehensive learning management system, or an LMS, is a prerequisite for creating an immersive learning environment. It should serve as a central repository of information, course material, assignments, web resources, open for access and use to all students. It also acts as a simple system to assess students' progress through assignments, etc. A good LMS offers flexibility, ease of use, and accessibility. So it is that as educators, we need to even look into the well defined course outline. At the very outset, teachers must prepare a definite course outline to guide the learners. They must lay out course content and structure and the tools to be employed for instruction. The course outline should include course resources, objectives, assignment, details, assessments, and their grading percentage. Teachers must also clearly define the parts of the material that they would be covered online and that those would form a part of classroom instruction. They must also clearly state the requirements, and a well-defined course outline helps students keep tracking of their learning, a necessity in the course that promotes independent learning. The teacher can use the outline to keep track of course progress and pace. So, teacher also need to get ahead with the assessment strategy to identify the improvement areas and work on them to achieve improved learning outcomes. As a part of this, the educators need to plan a suitable assessment strategies to create a holistic blended learning program. Determining the optimal strategy to test learning outcomes and tracking course progress is essential. So we need to have clear learning objectives. So teachers must identify and define clear learning objectives to help students understand what they can expect from this course. And an effective blended learning classroom mandates a definite understanding of course goals before educators start creating the content. The objectives serve as a roadmap, helping everyone understand where learning is headed and the topics that need to be covered to successfully achieve the course objectives. There should be adequate clarity in establishing how to blend online with the established methods of teaching. To determine the course objectives, teachers must identify the skills that the learner should develop during the course. the information to be included, and the types of training tools and activities that form part of the course. So, imagine a learning management system which constantly shifting elements and changing layouts. Not only would this result in a great deal of confusion, it would also obstruct smooth learning. Thus, consistent aesthetics imperative to bringing about focus and concentration in students. The basic structure and layout should be consistent with adequate visual and graphic elements to aid the understanding. And the next important component is good communication. Effective communication between the teacher and the students needs to be established to achieve improved learning outcomes in a blended learning model. There should be an adequate exchange of queries and feedback with regular classroom discussions. Teachers can provide their contact information and encourage students to communicate in case of queries and concerns to establish a favorable rapport. Toward the end of the course, they can also engage learners in live or online surveys, evaluations, and opinions on the quality of course and its delivery. Providing regular and constructive feedback is an important part of the effective communication. So, for this, definitely a well trained teacher is required. A blended learning course necessitates the proper teaching training to facilitate optimal learning. They must understand the student needs and accordingly design the courses. Effective blended learning professional training must include instructional approaches and strategies that are based on understanding student perspectives. By encouraging teachers to experience the blended learning as learners, they receive the first hand experience and required to create relevant and interactive content for students. So, since blended classrooms can be difficult to plan and manage, teachers must also be trained in the strategies for such classrooms. They must be well versed with the technology required to execute blended learning and thus need training on software and hardware management also. So, I conclude there can be no denying the fact that online learning is here to stay. The importance of blended classroom in this context becomes physical and virtual learning spaces matter. Educators must catch up with this trend and help students succeed through an effective blending learning approach. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am, for your views. So the summarization of your discussion is this curriculum framework is one of the essential conditions necessary to effectively leverage technology. Technology is best able to enhance learning when teacher uses it intentionally with the adopted curriculum, interweaving technological tools matches the desired learning outcomes. Let me just quickly go on to John, sir. I can see your point of discussion, advantages and disadvantages, advantages and challenges of adopting the blended learning model in school education. Mr. John,
Tha-
can you hear me?
Yes. Very clear, loud and clear.
I think
Dr. Wag,
Mr. John
thank
is
you for
inaccessible.
asking for my opinions. Yes, Dr. Wag. So we've
John,
heard a
sir?
lot from Anupama. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think he's
Yeah,
on
I
his
can
way
hear
and
you,
there's some
Dr. Wag.
We
technical
can
issue.
hear
No,
you.
I can hear you.
The
Yes.
problem is with his connection. You carry on, Doctor.
Okay, because fine. So the point is, we've heard a lot from Anupama ma'am about blended learning and advantages, but blended learning or use of technology is something which I feel is not new to our education system. For the past 10 years, I think we've all been involved, or most of us know the use of technology, the use of smart boards, hybrid boards, because I lead a school and head a school which was founded in 2009 having Promethean boards. So technology was there. What the pandemic has taught us is about how to use technology effectively with physical teaching. Because now that we've come out of the pandemic, we think we've come out of the pandemic, we are not sure about it, but things seem to be opening up. We have learned to use technology along with our physical classes. We all do understand that just technology is not sufficient, and
advantage of using technology with physical classes is that you can access children or pupils from different areas who are unable to attend your school for some duration or whatever. Like we have seen in the past 6 months, we've had students from not just all over India, but we've had students from Egypt, Germany, UK, France, who have been admitted to our school, but due to the lockdown and due to the inaccessibility of flights, they were in their respective countries. And we were able to connect with them via WhatsApp, via emails, messages. So, blended learning is obviously hybrid learning, but it also depends on how well we are using that technology. And as Anupama ma'am has rightly pointed out, there needs a lot of planning to be done. A planning system, when she spoke about curriculum planning, I would say that just having the tools or a learning management system is not enough, because even when we introduced a learning management system, so much time was used in training our teachers for the LMS, and you also have to orient the parents for the LMS. So parents need orientation. Children, of course, are adaptable, flexible, are able to connect very easily. But parents and teachers, two ends of the spectrum, who want the best for their children, needed a lot of hand holding. This LMS or technology obviously does not come cheap, and a school should be willing to invest in good technology. Having the advantage of laptops for our teachers from 2009, yet some of them were hampered because they did not all, senior teachers did not all use laptops for teaching 9, 10, 11, 12. So when you use technology and you're doing blended learning, in a classroom, you're just facing your class and talking to the children, and you're paying attention to those kids in your class. In blended learning, you have to also look at the camera or device, and you have to pay attention to the kids who are in a remote area. I mean, in their own homes or whatever. So the teacher's attention is doubled. She has to divert her time between the physical students and the students who are not there in class. So advantages are, of course, you're more accessible. You can reach out to students. They don't miss out anything. But at the same time, you have to train your teachers. You have to train the parents. You have to get more devices. Cost factor is there. So I think with these, it is a good tool to use depending on the type of technology you're using, but we need to see how accessible it is for each and every school. So I think that is all from me, Dr. Wag.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. John, for sharing those views and specifically mentioning the advantages and disadvantages of adapting to a new technology. But let me just highlight one more point. If technology wouldn't have come to the rescue of all educators across the world, it would have been very difficult for us to connect to the children. So it is proved its worth, and we schools and educators should now adapt to it and give provision in our annual budgets also, which will take care of the technology aspect of imparting quality teaching learning practices. So on that note, let me just move on to Revati ma'am for the point. Blended learning will enhance students' engagement in their own learning, and how can schools monitor the social emotional well-being and students' learning in this model? With such a huge experience under your belt, ma'am, looking forward for your valuable insights.
Thank you so much. I was just listening to John talking about how it can be used, and I just cannot but agree with everything that he said, because we have to see technology not as a standalone, something that we have started now when the pandemic happened. I think we've been doing this for a long time now. Maybe it's more organized, it's more widespread, and it has sort of been a compulsion where in areas where it was never used before. That's where the thing comes. So, yes, and perhaps we have not used so many tools in technology that we had used so far. So, I will give you a little more talk on the social emotional component, because that's one angle that people keep talking about. How does it impact us socially and emotionally? Yes, we are hearing a lot many cases of anxiety and high anxiety, depression, all of that, not just among children, but also among adults, a lot more. And you know whom we call as a villain? Technology. Villain is technology because we think because that's a villain you can't do away with. So then you think let's blame it on him, which is on it, which I think noisy, confusing, gamified, instant gratification. All of these are reasons why the digital world is there to stay. And I think that digital world that our children are born in is something which they call their homes. So our systems don't really help us to navigate safely, help them understand the whole thing, and then sort of self regulate. So, we immediately, what is a humanness? This thing is that can we remove the excesses? Can we put full stops? Can we put barriers? This is what we think. And that is why you will see in some homes, the minute the child enters standard 10 and 12, the connection is switched off, mobiles are taken away, all of that happens. In There are some houses where the parents will shout helplessness and say, ma'am, you can do anything with my child, but I can't do anything if I take away the mobile. Taking away something, a tool that's given, is no answer to it. What I think as an educationist is that we have to build a culture. We need to build a culture of self reflection. We need to build a culture of responsibility, of care, of commitment, of compassion. And how does a culture get built? When every member of the family, be it in school, be it in outside community, or be it at home, everyone follows certain norms. That's how. See, we have knife is a tool, scissor is a tool. Okay, anything which has got sharp edges is a tool. But how do we use that carefully? We over a period of time we have learned it, and so also is technology. So tools such as these will be there. We can't just throw them away and say that this can be done. We understand the usefulness of it by the trial and error method. As Anupama rightly pointed out, it requires a lot of training for the teachers. They need to have a complete understanding of the system. Children need modeling, and when we leave them, when we have models, real life icons, I think children are not left just to trial and error, and therefore they will not be playing around with technology. So rather than keeping away something from students, I think it's important for us to emphasize on a fair and a just way of using technology. Having said that, I think how do we go about it is the next question. So, be it for purposeful learning and the right outcomes or for socio emotional well being, my point is we have to bring in purpose and relevance. Without purpose and relevance, children will find the futility of everything. Everything is treated as a time pass, if I can use. And therefore, we need to nurture this purpose. We need to make it more relevant, and education needs to become more relevant. So by helping students in the path of discovery, self actualization, self reflection, I think what we are giving them is a very clear sense of purpose, and that means we are creating a whole world of generative learners. Who are generative learners? Those are the people who reflect within themselves as to what do I need to do? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And if I'm not doing something that I may have to do, why am I not doing that? So if I get a clarity of purpose of the plan of action, I will do it well. And how do we make that more responsible or make that more adaptable in our own places? We need to connect our real world problems to our learning. And that's how teachers need to bring their classrooms alive. And no better way to do that than blended format, because the blended learning format connects you to teachers across the globe, problems across the globe, and children can do projects. Choosing a project across the globe, why do we have to do a project which belongs to the textbook of chapter 17 of the history book? It doesn't. It can be a project that I'm talking about, for example, the current Russian crisis or the Russian and other things. So why don't our Ukrainian crisis, why don't I talk about that? Why can't I take up a project? And that's what we have to do. Can we make thinkers out of our children? If we make thinkers out of our children, they will solve life problems. So you don't need design workshops, design thinking workshops. What we really need is, can we get the workshops in our classrooms by the teachers themselves, who kindle that thought process of curiosity, why and why not. Instead of teaching a subject with a full stop, can we put a comma and ask them to complete the sentence? If we can do that, I think a lot more learning will happen. And I think the blended learning format can be used very, because we can use it by leveraging technology to be able to plan our academics better. There will be a pathway where there will be a lot of innovations or innovative ideas coming from across the globe. And that's what really matters. It's not about I and me, or my school or our school. It is about us, the whole education space as a whole. Can we do more relevant projects, more collaborative projects where children join hands with the 4 or 5 other students and do the projects? And that's what blended learning comes in. So while I am a great, path runner, if I can say, or front runner for an actual experiential learning component, especially in the primary schools, I also will say that we have to use technology in this manner of making children more collaborative. Can they collaborate with a school in Poland and have those children do it? And I'll give you a simple example. What we did, a film festival, international film festival of values. So we took stories from Hitopadesha and from Jataka Tales and converted that into value lessons and made movies. And the students made the movies themselves. And the Polish school and the Finland school, they made their stories based on their folk tales. Now we pulled them all together and we got 4 other countries to participate. 7 countries, we made an international film fair. Okay. The children had a great enthusiasm about it. Above all, there was a sense of well-being. But what did the children learn? They learned 36 values, and they were not values of Poland or India or Finland or Italy. They were values for human beings. So they say in Hindi, "Pad likhkar gyani banne se pehle insaan bano." And I think that's the purpose of education. And we have to use all our tools. It can be technology, it can be our face to face learning. Use tools that are adaptive so that there is a right fit learning that happens. And that will encourage a better mindset, which is a growth mindset. These pathways will open ways for the teachers to be able to move to a more personalized teaching learning process where there is more peer-to-peer interaction because of the blended format. At the same time, the teacher can come face to face of identifying where children don't speak. Have we all not noticed in our classrooms that a child who was otherwise so shy in a real-time school suddenly had the courage to make public addresses during, the lockdown when he came on a digital platform? Why did that happen? That happened because there was an opportunity for him where he may have had support system of maybe a sheet of paper or something in front of him, but he was an opportunity to do in or speak in front of a larger audience. I think that is the blessing of blended learning, and therefore I personally believe blended learning format helps in self-exploration. Nothing to beat the teacher in the classroom, but not within the 4 walls of the classroom. A classroom today cannot be defined like that. It is much beyond the 4 walls. It's a place where learning happens not just for the child, but for the teacher as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well articulated, ma'am. To summarize it, technology will always be a tool at the hands of the teacher. The teacher is the master of the class, and she has to think what kind of tool she wants to, deploy to ensure that the teaching learning process is more engaging and participatory for her students. And as this generation of learners are having a more intuitive relationship with technology than the previous one, ensuring while using technology, we educators should also ensure the development of interpersonal skills do not suffer. Use of technology with a purpose and understand which tool is right for which assignment, job, or a project so as to achieve the desired learning outcome. So this is going to be the role of the teacher. Technology is there and will be there, and there will be more advancements in technology. The teacher has to decide which tool as a technology will help her class in achieving the learning outcomes. Like ma'am, you said, education should ensure the development of each and every student as a good human being first, which will be the foundation of the success and glory. Now, moving on to the NEP, the National Education Policy, and National Education Policy is a very promising doctrine, and it also promotes various multimodal approaches to learning. I would now request Mr. AP Sharma to just tell us about the various government initiatives, or how does he see NEP and blended learning, and give us some insights on that. Over to you, Mr. Sharma.
Thank you very much, Dr. Walk. So, after exclusive brainstorming, my turn came. So, I need to
Yeah.
reinvent the wheel. So, actually, when we started NEP discussions, I was part of the NEP discussions in the beginning. And then I was part of the NEP team of implementation for two of the states in India, while I was working in Qatar for 5 years. That was a very good way of learning few things. Yesterday, I was in a virtual conference, and there were professors from Nottingham. There was professors from the MIT also, and there was few professors from South Africa and New Zealand, and few things were redefined. So let me redefine few things. One thing is face to face. What is face to face? Face to face is right now also we are face to face. So forget about what is face to face. When we talk about physical classes, online and offline classes, you know it very well. When you are teaching in a class, there are many children who are offline that time, and then you have to bring them online. So forget about offline and online also. Very simple is that how you can inculcate a child's learning process into a process where he thinks that he's a self learner. When we talk about hybrid, we are talking about two things, either on TV, either on mobile, or physical. Very interestingly, this is not hybrid. Hybrid is further. If you go to India, particularly the country like India, Kenya, Sudan, what was happening? Very interestingly, in the state of Jharkhand, there was a teacher who was using loudspeaker and was going to various streets and was teaching his children with social distancing and everything. This was also hybrid. Now, in Kenya, what was happening? There was one teacher. He made them sit under the tree in a garden under the trees, and then he was talking to one child. This child was telling it to other child. Other child was taking it to the next child. So various things were happening not with the technology only, and you never know what becomes what. Revati ma'am gave very good example of knife. How we teach how to use knife depends upon teachers and parents. Knife is used for creation. Knife is not used to murder anybody. This is to be taught by parents. This is to be taught by us, so that children don't think of making something which is very destructive when they become young. And that's why at that level, it's very important to inculcate human values. And for that reason, the generation, that generation who is a parent has to learn, because they need to unlearn many things which has been taught to them by a previous generation, because they saw world wars, they saw many other things, but now we need to make a beautiful world which is becoming more and more difficult. Let me go to one more thing. We were talking about learning management system. Please forget about learning management system. Learning can't be managed. If you are trying to manage the learning, this means there will be no learning. If you are trying to plan learning, there will be no learning. Most, not most, 99.90%, 99.99% inventions took place because unplanned things happened. Discoveries happened because unplanned things happened. Therefore, we are there to facilitate children, we are there to navigate children. And sometimes we need to take a route which we never took before. And that is very interesting. So while navigating it, it becomes evident that how we are using our tools, how we are navigating children, and let them go with a free flow. Don't try to manage learning. For God's sake, in India, there had been a lot of managing learning. NEP has said it very interestingly, let learning be a free flow. There should not be any syllabus, there should be curriculum. In curriculum, that this is to be learned, this is learning outcome, how you achieve it, there can be different ways. There can be different ideas, there can be different experiences. And for God's sake, we need to check that sometimes we blame something and we try to say, oh, mobiles are a villain. Now they become savior. in most of the parts of state and country. And very interestingly, the knowledge this time, particularly NEP, when we were talking about such things in one of the state, I told them that see, CBSE and various state boards has eliminated some portions. There had been rationalization of syllabus. Now what will happen? You can't give a child a chapati which is 33% pakka. You have to give him a proper chapati. So these knowledge gaps are to be filled. So in that particular state, I took the webinar of around, there were around 11,000 something principals. And we planned that, yes, what we need to do is that whatever has been the knowledge loss, we need to make capsule of 10% of that what was eliminated. And then this knowledge is required. Otherwise, you can't make a brick wall losing few bricks out. No, the foundation will be very poor. KG students, kindergarten students are yet to see the classes. They had never been to school for 2 years. How will you make a good foundation? So knowledge loss and those kind of things about which NEP didn't tell anything, but NEP gave us a way. And that way is that do not try to discuss on such kind of things which can be navigated in a different way, but try to become a facilitator as a teacher. And we need to learn continuously. We should not wait for another pandemic to come, then our teachers will learn few more things. Rather, we need to make them proactive so that they can think about the future. And there should be blending, a beautiful blending about which NEP said in advance. NEP was not knowing what we are heading towards. And we don't know in 2025 what kind of techniques will be there, what kind of technology will be there, what kind of schools will be there. Altogether different thing. When I was in Birla, particularly in Qatar, I was having students of 25 nationalities, and same thing happened what Dr. John said. And we were trying to fix it up where their time zones. Very interestingly, one child was trying to learn at 12 o'clock in the night, another child was trying to learn at 4 a.m. But yes, everything happened. The most important thing is learning should continue, and we should make our children self-learners, self-disciplined. And this way, it is very important to discipline the previous generations who are teachers, who are parents, as well as in the society. Yes, this generation is going to be a great generation of students. When they will come out, we must salute them that they survived and they will be the best. Why? Because the tough things make tough people, and tough people do great things. So towards end, I will say just one thing, that try to redefine things. Many times in classes, we say, think, that is virtual. Sometimes we tell children, experience whenever they are at home. That experience, do this experiment, try to see and observe at home. So mixing these two will not reduce anything. We need to make a good combination. What things we can take at blended, what things we can, at offline and online. But yes, the concentration and multiple intelligence must be taken care of. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, sir, for that thoughtful insights on the NEP. NEP is a very promising doctrine, like I told you. It empowers the teacher. It gives a lot of empowerment to our teachers, autonomy to teachers, like Mr. Sharma also mentioned. It is up to the teachers to use the various tools that are required. And within the curriculum framework, it just generally talks about the curriculum framework, but it is a very comprehensive document. And on the government fronts, also, and the initiatives taken by government. For example, we have this Diksha app where e-content is there for teachers as well as students. We have a very promising Swayam, that is study webs of active learning for young aspiring minds. That is very good initiative by the government towards making education accessible to all. And even the National Education Technology Forum, which they want to establish as an autonomous institute, which will strengthen the digital infrastructure, do capacity building, and put a lot of e-contents which are available. So this will make the education really support the three cardinals of the policy, that is access, equity, and quality. So that will help us. So it's a very promising document, and I'm sure that the Indian education ecosystem is going to change in certain years to come. Now let us very quickly go for a summarization of this, because we are running short of time. So we will. I would now like each of the panelists to just share their experiences in their particular schools on the implementation of the blended learning format, and how their schools are doing this to blended learning, making blended learning an integral part of the curriculum. May I go to Mr. John for his closing remarks?
Thank you so much, Dr. Wag. The closing remarks would be, we had focused a lot on blended learning last year when the pandemic was in force and schools had not opened. We did use blended learning by providing technology, tripod stands, mics, etc. for teachers, even during at their homes and in the classrooms when they came back to school. But at present, with the entire school coming back, we are only, as Revati ma'am said, we are using this technology because we've gone ahead with so many knowledge-based apps, with Zoom being the common platform. So we've gone ahead with our international collaborations. So though all the kids are back in school, at present in our school, we've stopped with anything blended, other than those kids who are still stuck abroad due to various reasons, a handful of them. But we are working now with renewed vigor on international collaborations. And as ma'am so rightly pointed out, Revati ma'am, that you can connect with schools right across, you can do a lot of projects. So we are using blended technology to reinforce our strengths with partner schools across the globe. So that's the present scenario. But what we have learned is, keep adapting, keep being flexible, move along with the times. We
Yeah.
cannot stay stuck in our ways. We have to keep an open mind. And as Dr. Sharma said, don't manage the systems, education system. Very true, Dr. Sharma. Yes, we are learning as we go along, we are learning and adapting. That's all from me. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Mr. John. Let me go to Anupama Devi, ma'am, for her closing remarks.
Yes, sir. We have been using the synchronous and asynchronous mode of teaching, and where our teachers has recorded the videos initially, and we used to put it in the learning management system, where sufficient training was given to students to see the videos and come back to the online classes, and they used to get ahead with the assessments, and doubts used to be clarified. That is the practice where we have done it initially, and now we are well equipped with the tools what are to be used for learning outcomes, and teachers are rightly choosing the tools, and getting ahead with online tools, and so that our students are able to take it and do it. As you said, we are not going to manage the learning. So definitely it is that it's a platform where we have initially started. As Sarma sir told, there are many challenges for us also, where our parents, students, and teachers are using. But now they are well equipped with the things, and hope things are in place and will be doing. And it's all that involvement of teachers and students for reaching the outcomes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for the remarks. Revati, ma'am, I would like to request you to go ahead with your closing remarks.
Yeah, so hybrid teaching as a strategy combines basically technology and teacher instruction, and that would be the ideal way of moving forward. That's how we would like to see. However, I'm going to relate an experience to tell you how within your school sometimes you have to use different strategies, or within a group of schools under the same management we use. So while I run 3 schools in the city, I also run 2 schools in the rural areas. One of them happens to be in the heart of Madhya Pradesh, and in a very rural setup in Madhya Pradesh. And the children, all of them belong to workers or farmers' children. So their fees is also very, very minimal. Now, this was a school where when the lockdown was announced, March and April, uh, the children were thrown completely out of gear, because there were people who did not even have a smartphone, so that we could not do anything. So all that we could do, our children whose parents had smartphones, we had to send them a video recording. The children had to listen to it in the evening. Now that's not going to work for long. And we thought the lockdown would improve and we would open up, but we didn't. So when it came to June and I realized this, the first thing that I swung into action was we spotted 6 villages from where our children come. So we named them, and there were 8 of them. 2 of them had very, very few students. But 6 villages, we actually approached the Sarpanch, requested for a sabhagra or a hall where weddings are held, and then we told them, can you please give it on hire to us? We actually conducted our classes in those sabhagras. And I must say, to the credit of all those sarpanches, at the end of the year, when I asked them, what is it that I have to pay? And I had even told them that even children from the villages, but from the other schools also, can come to my school. My teachers who belonged to that particular village went to that particular sabhagra. They had a differential instruction system because they had different classes, maybe of 7, 11. The teacher who was never taught 7th standard because was teaching only 11th and 12th was now coming down to the level of a 7th standard child. But every teacher worked so hard to come down to the level and make himself or herself so very clear in the instructions that learning did happen. There were lots of activities that we could do. Of course, it was very, very difficult for us because we had to run it in batches. There was too much of planning back in. But at least for 2 years, the children were not left without education. So, on the one hand, you have a city school that will have an access and equity or whatever you call it. On the other hand, you will have a school like this. How do school leaders open up their minds to look at solutions to such problems differently and yet come across with this one solution that education must go across or learning must happen in classrooms, or whether it's classrooms or like I think Mr. Sharma said, under a tree? Somewhere they have to have the learning must go on. That's the crux of it. We call this the mohalla schools. And because instead of the children coming to school, it was the school that went to the children's homes. And I think that's what we have to do. Can we think as school leaders differently? Can we think of the whole education as one educational space of ecosystem rather than my school and your school? I think if that goes on, I think we'll have a huge difference in the way we see education as a whole. We don't need policies then. We'll all come together ourselves.
Absolutely right. Thank you, ma'am. Like you rightly said, our school educators and leaders should always ensure that learning never stops. And that's a remarkable work done by all educators and teachers, especially in getting down and seeing to it that they connect with their students. Mr. Sharma, your closing remarks on the subject matter of blended learning would be highly appreciated.
Yeah, I'm not going to leave this blended learning, and I have already see, since you people are not leaving this virtual, now everything is almost normal. Still, you are running conferences on virtual mode, so I'm not going to leave. So what I have done, that I was already working with Face to Faith Foundation of Tony Blair ji, and then we are in touch with more than 6-7 countries schools, and now I am linking my school with various schools where our best teacher can take one class in another school and their teacher can take one class in our school. And I have just initiated it and it is going wonderful. The best of the teacher exchange is happening very nicely, and then they are taking it sportingly. And second thing, extra classes were being conducted in school itself. I said now extra classes will be virtually, means those children who need remediation as well as the gifted children who need further polishing, that will be done at home. So children need not stay in the school for longer hours, and even teacher need not stay in school for long hours, because most of them are ladies and they are homemakers. So let them make their home also. Now by this time parent also realized, because they were surrogate teachers, I started taking their help also. That few of the very good officials who are at very, very well placed, they are taking we have started work project synergy, in which every Saturday they are talking on virtual media, and of course talking to the class 11 12 students, that how they are placed in their own occupation and all. And very interestingly, that I conduct workshops. I am a resource person, you know it very well, that this month also in Dubai also I'm conducting around 7 to 8 workshops. physically as well as virtually. From Dubai, I was conducting workshop for my school in India, very interestingly. So that will continue, and many schools where we cannot afford to get a resource person because it's very costly, they can really help us by this virtual. So please don't leave blended learning, blend it with some beautiful colors like ma'am said, yellow and blue. Let us add few more colors to make it a beautiful Indradhanush.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Just to add on to your remarks, blended learning will never be a substitute for face to face or online, whatever you call offline learning. It's not merely a mixing of face to face and online mode. Rather, it's a well planned combination of meaningful activities in both the modes. But blended learning can be the best of both worlds, though a significant undertaking. Once implemented successfully, such a program has a significant benefits for all the stakeholders in our education ecosystem. Educational landscape of today's world is undergoing a radical transformation. Pragmatic approach and a mindset of adapting a new paradigm in education will help the education ecosystem to evolve and to adjust to the post COVID world. I think these are my closing remarks. I thank all of you, all the esteemed panelists, for being a part of this discussion of adopting a blended learning model in school education. And we have covered a lot of points, from the productivity in the classroom to the teacher engagement to the policy, that is the NAP, and to how blended learning can supplement and complement the teaching learning process. A big thank you to all of you for sparing your valuable time and to being a part of this enriching discussion and deliberation. I'm
No,
sure
thank
the
you.
audience must be having a lot of takeaways from this. Thank you, all of you, once again.
Thank you
Over
from
to
our
you,
side
Shubham.
Thank you.
also.
Yeah, yeah.
You had been a nice moderator. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
We learned from each other.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Beautiful idea shared. I think that's
Yeah.
wonderful.